Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content.
The Mayan hero twins have traveled to the dark realm of Xibalba, the underworld, on a mission of vengeance. They are humanity's last hope against the demon lords who rule this realm. But now the hero twins find themselves in the House of Bats, a nightmarish cave populated by thousands of man-sized vampire bats. The walls here drip with blood. They were so terrified that they used their magic to enlarge one of their blowguns, big enough that they could both hide inside the tube to take refuge from the bloodthirsty swarm. It has been quiet for some time now. The twins look at one another. Is it safe? One of the brothers nods, then peeks his head out to take a look. He is immediately decapitated by the demon lord Camazotz, the ruler of this realm. He is a massive winged creature with the stubby snout of a vampire bat, yet the arms of a human. Camazotz takes the severed head. He bounces it on the ground. He's in a big arena. The stone ring of the Mayan ball game is at the other end of the court, like a vertical basketball hoop. Camazotz dribbles, he jukes right, he's on a breakaway. He dribbles the head, he takes off from the foul line, and 360 tomahawk jam, he dunks the head. Wow, is it the shoes? He doesn't even wear shoes.
Hello, and welcome back to Badass of the Week. My name is Ben Thompson, and I am here with my co-host, Dr. Pat Larish. And Pat, it is Halloween time.
It is indeed. I walk around the neighborhood. People have their trick-or-treat decorations up already. Some lights, some spider webs, inflatable skeletons, because you got to have inflatable skeletons.
Yes, all the good spooky stuff. And
Yes.
I've always loved Halloween, and now that my son is old enough to start appreciating it, it's even more fun. There's stuff in the neighborhood that scares him, but he likes it. And he's like, I want to go see that creepy thing again, but I don't want to get too close. Like, oh, I like that, but I don't get too close to it. But I like it, and I think that's a pretty cool thing to experience with him. And one thing that I like doing with Halloween is on the website and now with the podcast, I've been doing Halloween badasses in the month of October. We did Vlad the Impaler last year with Tanny Caesar, and that was a really fun episode. And it was with Bathory. And this year, I guess, we are talking about Camazotz, the Mayan death bat. He is an underworld god, and he is the god of sacrifices and blood and all of these great Halloween things. And we're actually able to tie in a few things with this episode that makes me happy because, we've got this Mayan death god, which is very Halloween oriented. It's got bats. That's the Halloween thing. A large pumpkin is going to play prominently in the story at some point. So that's a good Halloween tie-in. And also, I believe this episode is going to air on the 22nd of October, which is the first day of the NBA season. So we actually have a basketball tie-in in this episode as well with Camazotz.
We do.
And you might be listening at home and wondering what the Mayan death god has to do with basketball. But as you saw in the cold open, he's awesome at basketball, and he plays not basketball. He's awesome at the Mayan ball game, which kind of resembles a basketball hoop turned vertically. He is famous in the mythology for decapitating not one, but possibly two of Mayan civilization's greatest heroes and dunking their severed heads through a basketball hoop, which is awesome.
Yes. And you might hear the name Camazotz, and some listeners might be thinking, where have I heard that before? Not in a Mayan mythology context. If you're a fan of A Wrinkle in Time, that might be where you heard the name. Madeleine L'Engle uses the name Camazotz for the name of this sinister planet where the kids go. And when they get there, it's all this weird suburban neighborhood where all of the people, all of the kids who live in those houses, are out on the lawn bouncing balls in perfect unison with one another.
That is creepy.
It's differently creepy.
Yes.
There's no like bloodletting or anything, there's no decapitation, but
That
it's
would
creepy.
still freak me out if I was like going for a walk around my neighborhood and I saw that. I would not enjoy it.
Yeah.
So when we come back, we're going to talk about Camazotz. He is the bat god. He's associated with death, sacrifices, caves, blood, and corn. Because as we see with these, a lot of ancient mythological gods, there's always some kind of weird thing that they're also the god of, which I love personally.
Yep. Corn.
He is depicted in statuaries and things with 2 human arms, one of which usually holds some sort of shank or knife. He's got sharp claws, he's got bat wings, he's got big teeth. He lives in a huge blood-drenched cave filled with man-sized vampire bats in the underworld. He's the ruler of the twilight and death realm. And he, like we said, he, on 2 separate occasions, decapitated humanity's last great hope and slam dunked their severed heads through the hoop of the Mayan ball game. Boom shakalaka.
Boom shakalaka.
So we're going to take a really quick break. And when we come back, we're going to tell the story because I think it's a good one and it's going to start weird and get even weirder. So please stick with us. So we will be talking about Camazotz. He is the death god of the Mayan culture. And Pat, the Mayan culture is one that, we know a little bit about, but it is a very long and ancient culture in Mesoamerica.
Yeah, it's very old. You may be picturing one of those monumental step pyramids with a shrine on top.
Like a Chichen Itza or something.
Yeah. I think that might be.
Chichen Itza is, for sure.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I just spaced out for a moment. And the Mayan culture lasted thousands of years in Central America from at least 2000 BCE. And where in Central America? Southeastern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, El Salvador. There was rivalry with the Mexica, sometimes called the Aztecs, and they tried to replace some Mayan texts with their own when they had the opportunity. And also later in the 1500s and 1600s of our era, Spanish conquistadors come along and they do the conquistador thing and, try to take things over for Spain, for Christianity, for gold.
Right. But then there is still remnants of the Maya around when they arrive, though, which is a really interesting thing. So, the culture begins or dates to at least 2000 BCE. And, there's a real golden age in around 800 to 1200 to 1300 kind of time period. But when the conquistadors show up in the 1600s, there is still Mayan culture. It's not, there's this kind of idea that, they were replaced by the Aztecs. But no, the Aztecs tried to replace them in certain places, but the Maya persevered and stuck around.
Yeah. And, in 1697, the last independent Mayan city finally is overcome by the Spanish. The city's named Nochmeten. And the Spanish did try to suppress a lot of aspects of Mayan culture because they wanted to Christianize things. They wanted to Spanishize things. Okay. In the middle of all this, you have some Jesuit priests who are writing detailed descriptions of the things they encounter. And the reason we have the Popol Vuh, which is the epic of the Quiche Maya, one of the groups of Maya, is because a Jesuit priest, Francisco Jimenez, transcribed it into Latin characters from the Mayan script and translated it into Spanish. Now, I mention this because this is the source for some of the stories we'll be telling you. And the Mayan script, sometimes called hieroglyphics, this elaborate writing system that you can see on the walls of temples, you might see it painted on pottery. The Spanish tried to suppress the use of that, and they tried to encourage the use of Spanish as a language instead. People did continue to speak the Mayan language, and they do speak it today, but they stopped using the Mayan script, and they used the Latin alphabet, the Spanish alphabet, to write it whenever they wrote it. So reading the Mayan script was lost. And what that meant was, well,
you can't read the old texts.
yeah,
right? And so that is going to be kind of a central component for the stories we're going to tell today, which is that, we have bits and fragments of stories, and they're not complete. And it's because a lot of this stuff was just kind of lost to time. We have little remnants of it. We can see the basketball hoop or the vertical Mayan ball game hoop hanging in stone from the walls of Chichen Itza, but we don't entirely understand how the game was played, which is just really too bad. But
we know enough that you can have an impressionistic idea, and so you have an image in your head when we talk about it as part of our story.
Yes. And so our story is going to be about Camazotz. And as you said, there's different ways to translate this, and there's different, texts over the different time periods. His name, I've seen it translated as either Snatchbat, Deathbat, or Sudden Bloodletter. Those are all different titles for Camazotz.
They're all scary.
They're all good. Yeah. They're very descriptive in different ways, but I like it. So he is a demon lord. He lives in the Mayan underworld, which, Pat, I'm going to say Xibalba is the name, is how you would pronounce this? Xibalba?
Yep,
okay.
that works.
Starts with an X, and you never know how to pronounce that. Yeah, it's always tricky.
Xibalba.
Yeah, so Camazotz the Death Bat, he's depicted with a vampire bat face and human arms, which would be scary. One of those hands is usually carrying a sacrificial victim, and the other is holding a knife. Although when we were first kind of going through this together, you were looking at statues of him, and you thought he was might have been a little too cute to be the Death Bat.
Well, but he's kind of cute. He's wearing his little loincloth,
Yeah, where's the loincloth?
like his proportions are kind of like Bluey, the cartoon dog. However, he's a cartoon bat who's maybe kind of cute. It's also just kind of the art style, but he is also scary,
Yes.
He's carrying a sacrificial victim and holding a knife, and is a bat with human arms. So, yeah.
Yeah, pretty awesome. He lives in an underworld cave known as the House of Bats, although it's unclear, like we've said with some of the not knowing the full story, if just every cave was known as a House of Bats. So he lives in the House of Bats. In his House of Bats, the walls drip with blood. During the day, he turns into a statue. But at night, he turns into a statue during the day while, I guess, his consciousness is in the underworld or something. And then at night, the statue comes to life and finds people and preys on them and sacrifices them and sucks all their blood like a vampire or a chupacabra or something.
That's Camazotz, the death bat god. Camazotz, the sudden bloodletter.
Yes. And so, one thing I kind of went down this rabbit hole while we were researching this, because he's clearly based on the idea of vampire bats, which is a thing that exists in this part of the world, and really only in this part of the world. And vampire bats are they're pretty cool. And the more I was looking into them, the more I thought they were I wanted to get more into it and learn more about vampire bats. So I think I've decided that vampire bats are the least cute, fuzzy thing in the world, because they're fuzzy. Maybe a tarantula is less cute. Some people think tarantulas are cute. I do not think that vampire bats are cute. They have these little pig snout faces, and they're pretty weird looking. They're pretty ugly little guys.
I bet mama vampire bats think they're beautiful.
That's probably true. Beauty is subjective.
Yeah. Okay.
But they are cool.
So vampire bats.
Yes.
Yes, they're cool.
They are evolutionarily adapted to drain the blood from other creatures while they're sleeping. So they have echolocation like other bats, but it's not as powerful as it is with other bats. Instead, they are kind of trained to hear the breathing noises made by large animals, specifically while they're asleep. So they can hear you breathing, and I guess maybe they go for slow breaths. I don't know, but they go out at night, they fly at high speeds through the Central American jungle, and they can apparently see infrared a little bit, kind of like the predator, to detect heat signatures from large mammals, and they can hear you breathing from a long ways away.
While they're flying zoom through the jungle.
Right. Yes, completely silently.
And this is amidst...
They don't even zoom. They make no noise when they fly.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So they fly over to you, or over to where the animal is, or that they want to get, and they they can do this weird, they can walk, they can run on all fours. Most bats can't do that. Usually the bats like have like the hook arms or whatever, but a vampire bat is the only species of bat that is capable of moving without flying. So they run on all fours, and you can find a video of this online, and it's really creepy.
I bet, yeah. Wow.
So they climb walls and they walk on the ground. So they glide through the forest about 3 feet off the ground. They look for horses, pigs, cattle, sometimes humans, though that's not super common. Once they find something, they land silently. They walk over to it, and they opened a wound either on like the wrist or the ankle or the neck. Vampire bats are small. I mean, that's the thing that is kind of that like makes them less terrifying in real life, is that the biggest ones have like a 14-inch wingspan, which is okay, but not huge. And, generally they're smaller than that.
I still wouldn't want to be trapped in a room with one.
No, absolutely not. Especially because they carry rabies and other diseases as well.
Yeah.
And so they bite you in an area where there's a lot of blood flow. But they have little teeth, and they have kind of a delicate touch, so you don't wake up. Or in some cases, there's some thoughts that they might lick you. They might have like rough tongues, and when they lick you, they can open a wound that way. If that doesn't work, they bite you. But they have this anticoagulant in their saliva, and some scientists called it Draculin. That's what he named the anticoagulant, of course. But
gee, I wonder why.
Yeah. And so
Draculin. Okay.
Yeah. And so, but you don't stop bleeding you bleed for like 2 hours. And so it just sits there and it drinks your blood. Like it's a little
so
wound,
it doesn't clot.
And then it doesn't clot. And so it's just there and it drinks your blood. It processes it really quickly. It secretes the plasma it doesn't need, and then it flies away. And so, it cuts you, it drinks your blood for an hour or so, and then pees on you and flies away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But like I said, they're 14 to 18 inches in wingspan, sometimes usually smaller. And they have found fossilized remains of a prehistoric species that they call the giant vampire bat, but it's only like 30% bigger than that. Like, so not even 2 feet.
Okay.
This is not like Mothra or anything.
Okay.
Now, that is a vampire bat, but Camazotz is a big vampire bat. And he is said to live in a cave. Vampire bats live in colonies of like 100 to 2,000. And that's a house of bats. And now imagine that Camazotz is there, and his bats are like human sized. They're very big sized.
Yeah.
And like 4 to 6 feet wingspans. Now we're talking about some scary stuff. And I'll do a little quote from the Popol Vuh that you were talking about earlier. He says, "They then put them into the house of bats. There was nothing but bats inside this house, the house of Camazotz, a large animal whose weapons for killing were like a dry point, and instantly those who came into their presence perished." And so that's the story we're going to tell this week.
Oh.
It's going to be fun. Okay, so like you said, what we know about this comes from the Popol Vuh, and it is the story of who we refer to as the Mayan hero twins. And so he starts showing up in the Popol Vuh, which is the sacred text of the Kiishi people of Guatemala. So the story kind of goes like this, and you'll have to help me because you're a little bit more well-versed. You have also been kind of reading up on this as well. The story goes like this. One day, this guy and his brother are playing the Mayan ball game, which is that vertical basketball game we were talking about. And they're being super loud. They're like having a fun time. They're screaming, they're yelling, they're like doing big dunks and, bombing 3-pointers. I don't know what the good reference points are here, but they're playing and they're being super loud. And they're being so loud that it's annoying their downstairs neighbors in the underworld, which I love. I just picture a bunch of grumpy demons down there being like, "Keep it down up there. What are you guys doing up here?"
Yeah, hit the ceiling with a broomstick.
Yes. And then they come up and they see what these two guys are doing. These gods of Xibalba come up and they see that these two brothers are playing the Mayan ball game. And so the demons challenge the brothers to a game. It's like Space Jam.
Uh-huh.
The brothers agree, and the demons beat them so hard that the brothers die.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
They cut the head off the brothers, and Camazotz, this is the first time this is the maybe, he might have dunked the head through the hoop after he defeated them at the ball game, decapitate them, and then dunk the head.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yep.
Brings the head down to the underworld with him to kind of, I don't know, show off how good he is at basketball. It's like a trophy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, and so he takes the head down into the underworld, and then while the head is down there, and some time passes, an indeterminate amount of time passes, and there is a woman walking around in the underworld for reasons that were unclear to me.
Her name was Blood Moon, and she was actually a princess of the underworld, so she can walk around all she wants.
Oh, yeah, okay. So Princess Blood Moon, she can definitely walk around anytime she wants. It sounds like she belongs there.
Yeah.
So Princess Blood Moon comes across one of the skulls and picks it up, and the skull like animates and spits in her hand. And then she gets pregnant with twins, which this is another thing that just happens in mythology all the time.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah.
So she gets pregnant, and and actually her father, one of the kings of the underworld, he notices she's pregnant, and he's like, okay, who's the father? Did you sleep with Hunapu, the brother who got his head cut off? And she says, truthfully, no, I did not sleep with that guy. Her father thinks this is complete BS. Now, you and I know, Ben, that this is actually a true story. She did not actually sleep with that guy.
Yes.
But her father's like, no, I'm not buying this. Okay, when the babies are born, he's not happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
And sends owl messengers. These owl messengers, as often happens in stories like this, the owl messengers are actually secretly on the side of Princess Blood Moon. And so both Princess Blood Moon and the boys, the two boys, survive when they're finally born. And
yeah, they like put the kids on an anthill so the ants would bite them and they'd die, but then the owls rescue them.
Yes.
Something like that. This is one of those things that is like, this is an explanation for how like irrigation works. This is kind of, sometimes mythology does this sort of thing. Like, I don't understand the significance of the anthill, but that's what they did with them, and then they got away. And
also the boys survive and go on to have adventures.
Yes. They learn magic spells. They have adventures.
They have this rivalry with their half-brothers, their older half-brothers, who keep trying to undermine them and whatever. And they learn magic spells, and they eventually turn the half-brothers into howler monkeys. One of their magic spells is to convert their enemies into howler monkeys. They just scream and yell all day long, but just be monkeys and leave me alone, which is kind of a cool one. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these boys are the hero twins. So the story now to date is Camazotz is living in the underworld. He's living in Xibalba. He's hanging out. Some guys are being really loud and there's some loud sports game happening next door. He goes over there to see what's up. These guys are like, get out of here. We're playing basketball. And he's like, I'll show you guys how to play basketball. And he balls so hard that he dunks the severed heads through a hoop, brings the severed heads back with him. But then the severed heads, of course, produce offspring. And then those hero twins grow up and they learn magic spells, and they're going to do all of this great stuff and be the greatest heroes in all of humanity. But at some point, after they've learned their spells, after they've dealt with the howler monkey half-brothers, there is a mission that they have to accomplish here. They need to avenge their father, as you do. That's a pretty key component here. And how are they going to avenge their father? There's only one logical way to avenge your dad, who was killed in a dunk contest. And that is by space jamming the dark gods again and saying that you're going to challenge them to a basketball game and avenge your father's defeat. So this is like a sports movie.
It is. It really is.
So we're going to take a really quick break. And when we come back, we are going to get the repeat. We're going to get the big basketball showdown between the hero twins and Camazotz the Death Bat, who can fly and has human arms. So he has a big advantage.
And a dagger.
And a dagger, yeah, which he probably used on the basketball court to decapitate that dad.
Yeah.
So,
and he has a chip on his shoulder. So, he's not going to sit idly by. He's going to use.
Yes. He's going to use the tools available to him in the underworld.
Yes.
Which are plenty.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So stick with us. When we come back, basketball showdown. Welcome back to Badass of the Week. We are talking about Camazotz the Death Bat, and a central part of his myth is the Mayan ball game, which, Pat, like, I've been making a lot of basketball analogies, but is this like basketball?
It's not like basketball. So it's been around in some version or other since at least 2000 BCE. And Ben, as you've said, our knowledge of it is kind of fragmentary. And sometimes we learn, some versions from some sources and some versions from another source, and, like anything, there are regional variations as far as we can tell. It changes over time, Yeah,
different archaeological sites had different drawings and different, because the hoop is made out of stone. It's this vertical basketball hoop looking thing. It's a ring, her vertical mounted ring on the wall. And but they're different. The courts are different sizes. The rings are different sizes. The art depicted in these areas is slightly different.
We do know that it was a spectator sport like basketball.
Yeah, big arenas with a lot of seating. So almost certainly people would come out to see these games being played.
Yeah. And, basketball, you move around and you try to get the ball into a certain goal using your hands. In soccer, you do the same thing kind of, but you only use your feet. In this game, at least in the version that modern players have kind of revived, called ulama, some people play it today using a dense rubber ball, and rubber has been a thing. Rubber trees have been a thing in this part of the world. They're wearing traditional outfits. In this version, you hit the ball with your hips.
Okay. Because, I've seen it in pictures where they use their elbows or their knees. You were showing me the videos where they use their hips. And when you say traditional outfits, too, these outfits are great. They're feathers, right? Feathers, a lot of feathers, and just really cool looking outfits that these guys play in. And, like you said, it's two teams. We aren't even really sure about the number of players on a team, how scoring
probably
worked.
Varied.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Probably varied. The scoring, we don't quite know the rules of scoring. Even the court itself, sometimes the hoop is mounted on a completely vertical wall, and sometimes it's mounted on a wall that's kind of sloped at a 45-degree angle, which seems interesting. The ball size is different in different pictures. We believe that it was 3 to 5 kilograms. It's 8 pounds, 10 pounds heavy, right? Like a medicine ball. But in the pictures that were drawn by the Mayans, they're sometimes shown as pretty wildly different sizes, like a soccer ball size versus a much smaller size. So pretty interesting. And we believe that the court markers, there were court markers or decoration that were various animals or skulls or animal skulls, things like that.
And this was a spectator sport. It might also have had extracultural significance. It might have been used as a proxy for warfare. Hey, let's ball game it out. Let's settle it on the court. Yeah. Yeah.
And I've seen some things where there might have been sacrifices involved. If you lost, you got sacrificed, or there were sacrifices as part of maybe sacrifices to the gods were part of the ceremony of having the games. We know that there were sacrifices associated with the game, whether that was a side thing that they did as to, I don't know, we do the national anthem, they sacrifice a goat or whatever. Or maybe you got sacrificed if you lost the game. It's unclear.
And again, this was something that was played for millennia over a wide geographical expanse. So there is going to be a lot of variation. And I think there is some evidence that can be interpreted that the losers got sacrificed. Maybe it involved decapitation. Maybe the captain of the losing team got sacrificed. This was a culture that practiced human sacrifice. So yeah.
That's a game that we probably wouldn't want to play. Wouldn't want to be part of.
High stakes, very high stakes.
Very high stress. High stress free throws.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, speaking of decapitation, let's see what's up with those two twins that spawned from a severed head that was decapitated after game. So, okay, the brothers have grown up and they are on their revenge mission against Camazotz the Death Bat. They keep passing test after test sent to them by the gods. And Pat, so Camazotz is one of these gods, but there are a few gods in the underworld, and you dug up their names, and they're all great.
Yes. 1 death, 7 death.
Huh, okay.
Flying scab. Well, yeah, a lot of Mayan names begin with a number because some names, it was a convention to name people after the date on the calendar.
Oh, interesting.
When you were born or that you were associated with.
When we were doing the Ten Shuang episode, they have a culture like that in Nepal where you're kind of named after the day of the week that you were born on, and then your tribe name. So you run up with a lot of people who have similar names, but that's how you do it. So 1 death and 7 deaths. So 7 death wasn't 7 times more powerful than 1 death. Although I would think like if they were anime characters, I'd figure like 1 death might be the worst one, might be worse than 7 death.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, 7 death is 7th string or whatever. Yeah.
Is it like burns or is it like ordinal?
Oh, yeah.
Burns, degrees of burns.
Yeah. So we've got our numbered guys. We have some names without numbers. We've got Flying Scab. Gathered Blood. Demon Pus. Demon Jaundice. Staff Bone. Staff Skull. Someone whose name might be Wing. I think the text is a little uncertain. This is from the Popolvuh. So some guy who might be named Wing. Packstrap. Bloody Teeth. And Bloody Claws.
Okay. Flying Scab might be the best one, although Demon Pus sounds the most like a horror movie from the 80s.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Demon Jaundice is the funniest one. Flying Scab kind of sounds like or Gathered Blood is the one that sounds the most like a metal band. Although maybe 7 Death too. Although I could just be thinking of 7 Dust. Okay, so those are the gods. That is the monstars of Mayan mythology here. And so the hero twins, they're going through all of these trials and tribulations. Each one of these guys has a different trial for them. And the hero twins are doing the mythological hero thing, and they're winning. They're coming up with clever ways to outsmart the pack straps and 7 deaths of the underworld. And eventually they come to the House of Bats, where Camazotz resides. And Camazotz here, he is like the big evil bat, and he lives in this cave with like tons of vampire bats flying around all over the place. And the hero twins, they hide by jumping into a big tube.
Yes. Not just any tube, but they're blowguns.
Oh, they jump inside their blowguns.
Yeah, because that's obviously the first thing that would occur to me if I were in the House of Bats.
Mm-hmm.
I would hide inside a blowgun.
Hide inside of a blowgun. It must be a pretty big blowgun.
Maybe they use a magic spell to make it all fit somehow. Because they can do magic, remember?
Yeah, maybe shrink themselves. Yeah. I think that would make more sense than enlarging the staff or the blowgun. Yeah. Although... All right. Well, that's clever. I'm picturing when you avoid bees by jumping into the water and breathing through a reed.
Oh, there you go.
That's the kind of vibe I got here. Okay.
Yeah. So these guys, they might be using magic to assist in this because they have skills. They can do magic. They can talk to animals. Yeah. Yeah. They've got all sorts of weird abilities. Yes. Yeah.
And they've been using these to great effect to defeat all of the other gods of the underworld. And so they're hiding inside their blowgun, and one of the brothers, he's going to peek out and sees. I've seen it described as he gets impatient, but he pops his head out to see what's up. So he peeks his head out, and the second he peeks his head out, there's Camazotz, the dunk machine. He grabs the head, cuts it off, and then does flying 360 tomahawk between the legs, monster jam, dunks it through the hoop. And that's the end of that. That's the end of that, brother.
Well, for now.
For now. So if this wasn't mythology, I'd say that being decapitated and having your severed head dunked through a basketball hoop would be terminal. But we've already seen somebody was able to reproduce after having that happen to them. So
yes.
So this is not the end of this brother.
No, it is so not the end of this brother. So the decapitated brother, whose name is Hunahpu, he's busy being decapitated. And the other brother, Xibalba, that's another name that begins with an X. So Xibalba has been thinking and using his skills. So there's another ball game coming up, and meanwhile, somehow Xibalba has managed to talk to wild animals. And he's managed to communicate with a Quadamundi, and he says, "Hey, Quadamundi, I'm hungry. Could you share some of your food with me?"
Okay, he looks like fun. He looks like he'd be a cute cartoon buddy in the movie version of this.
Yeah. So this Quadamundi friend, you can totally picture a creature like this running around, kind of finding a gourd or a small pumpkin. And meanwhile, Xibalba, the surviving brother, has also managed to communicate with a rabbit. And he says, "Hey, rabbit, we've got this nice ball court here. It's a great place to hop around. Why don't you hop around and be cute and be all bunny-like on the ball court?" And, this day and age, someone would probably take a video of this and put it on TikTok of "Oh yeah, here's the bunny that's hopping around, interrupting the ball game." I guess my point is that apparently humans and human adjacent beings, like say the lords of the underworld, are easily distracted by cute animals hopping around. And so the Xibalban team, the underworld ball players, get distracted. They start watching the bunny hopping around.
That's weirdly cute. I like that. Hey, Seven Death, check that out. Look at that bunny. Oh, it's so cute. Oh my God.
yeah. And you see this thing rolling around on the ground or moving around on the ground out of the corner of your eye. Of course, you're going to what's up with this? So they're distracted. And Xibalba takes the gourd, the pumpkin or whatever, that the Quadamundi had brought. He swaps out the gourd for his brother's head and continues playing the ball game. I think it maybe takes Hunahpu a little bit of time to kind of recover from the whole decapitation thing. But anyway, Xibalba continues the ball game with the gourd, with the pumpkin, instead of his brother's head. And he's doing really well. And then at some point, the pumpkin just bursts. And I'm imagining pumpkin innards, pumpkin seeds and all that pumpkin goo on the inside, that stringy, gooey stuff. I'm imagining this just splattering all over the faces of the lords of the underworld in their, in their basketball uniforms or whatever.
Okay. Wow. So, all right. So, yeah. So Xibalban's want to use Hunahpu's head as the ball, which is awesome. And they do that.
Yeah.
But he needs to get the head back for his brother. And so he distracts them with this rabbit, which is maybe cute. Maybe they just want to eat it and that's too distracting for them.
Whatever.
But while they're distracted, he gets his brother's head back and swaps the pumpkin in. And then, and then they dunk it so hard that it just explodes. Or maybe, I guess he dunks it so hard that he explodes it all over that.
Yeah. We're going to need an instant replay of this moment. We're going to need to see the slow-mo. One way or another. The twins, our hero twins, win the match.
So
finally,
he takes the after swapping the severed head out, he just sticks it back on his brother and reincarnates him or regenerates him.
Yeah.
And then the brother and him play together.
That's how I'm picturing it. And they win the match.
And win the game.
And yes. So Is this the end of the story? No. Am I going to tell you all the details? No. I'm going to give you the executive summary. One thing leads to another, even though they have won this match and have pretty much shown that they have owned the Xibalban ball players. The hero twins still have to go through a bunch of ordeals and tests and this, that, and the other thing. The Xibalbans make it hard for them to do whatever it is they want to do. Finally, however, they are finally allowed to retrieve the remains of their father and give him a proper burial. And then they return to the land of the living. And then, well, what do you think happens next, Ben?
So let's recap. So
yeah,
this guy was playing basketball with his buddy a little too loud. These demon lords showed up, slam dunked his skull, took the head into the underworld. The head created two hero twins. The hero twins grew up looking for revenge. They decided they were going to play a ball game against the dark gods, but in order to get to them, they had to journey through hell. And at one point during the journey, they go into the house of Camazotz the Death Bat, who decapitates one of them and then dunks the head through a basketball hoop. The other one continues on, gets to the ball game at the center of the underworld. The gods say, yeah, we'll play, but we're going to use that severed head of your brother as the ball. He says, okay. He tricks them into swapping that ball out for a pumpkin, like the severed head out for a pumpkin, puts the severed head back on his brother, who can like now tag in and join the team. So now it's 2-on-5 instead of 1-on-5. Pumpkin, then he dunks it and it explodes all over the demon lords. And then after that, after he's won the game, they're allowed to take their father's remains back so he can be buried intact on Earth. So where do they go from there?
Well, okay, they're back in the land of the living, like the normal Earth, so that, they climb up to the Earth, they bury their father, and then they just keep going. They go up and up and up to the sky. And Hunahpu becomes the sun, and Xbalanque becomes the moon.
And that is how the solar system works.
Yes. Yes.
And that is Mayan mythology. And that is the story of Camazotz, the story of the Mayan hero twins, which is amazing. And Pat, you talked a little bit about the Jesuits writing down Mayan mythology, but how do we know so much about Camazotz and Mayan mythology and all of that?
Yeah. So a lot of our sources are written in the Mayan syllabic script. We know that because even though the knowledge of it had been lost, of that particular writing system had been lost thanks to suppression by the Spanish and replacement by the Latin alphabet and just general cultural suppression and things like that. Well, in the 20th century, one of the reasons we now can read Mayan in the original script is thanks to a Soviet linguist named Yuri Valentinovich Knorozov. He's our bonus badass for this episode. He was born in 1922, and he was the founder of the Soviet School of Mayan Studies. And from a linguistic perspective, he figured out that the Mayan script used a series of syllabic signs. So each glyph, each particular character, represents a syllable rather than just one sound. This is a huge step forward in deciphering Mayan inscriptions on temples and the very few Mayan codices, the actual books that survive in the Mayan script. And there's actually a story which he himself denied, but it says something about him that people wanted to believe this story. So we'll call it an urban legend, but it's a very telling urban legend. During World War II, he was a telephone operator in an artillery unit, and I don't think that's the part that's being disputed.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Knorozov was a soldier. He fought it for the Soviet Union in World War II.
Yeah. And his unit is stationed near Berlin at some point, and allegedly he's near the National Library. Actually, I suspect he probably found a way to be there at some point. Anyway, he's near the National Library. He's there. Maybe he's off duty. I don't know. Maybe he's looking at 3 extremely rare, invaluable Mayan codices that are held by the library that had amazingly survived the efforts of the Spanish conquistadors to suppress them. So picture our guy in the library. Suddenly, we hear shouts. In a library? Fire! fire, fire. So Yuri Valentinovich Knorozov grabs these 3 Mayan codices and rushes them to safety.
It's like the librarians of Timbuktu.
Yes, yes, yes.
And so, I mean, that's a great story. He said that was not true, but it is an awesome story, and it is.
But it encapsulates things people want to believe about him. That he's dedicated to the study of Mayan linguistics. That he, even if he didn't literally save these codices from a fire, he figuratively rescued them from oblivion.
That is true. He did do that. It was maybe not quite so dramatic, but he did do this by translating them and translating the Mayan hieroglyphics. But the reason that we kind of went down this hole while we were researching this was that the photo that we saw of Yuri Valentinovich Knorozov is a picture of a very intense-looking man staring directly into the camera, holding a cat that is also staring directly into the camera, making the exact same facial expression as him. And when we went into it, we found some stuff that is definitely a true story about this guy that is badass and awesome.
Yes. So he used that as his author photo for his publications. And sometimes editors would crop out the cat and he would be upset about that. He always wanted to list his cat as a co-author for all of his publications.
Yes. His Siamese cat, Asia, is a co-author on all of his works. Sometimes it would be edited out, but he would be very upset when that would happen.
Mm-hmm.
There's a picture of an angry Soviet-looking guy in a black suit holding a very angry-looking Siamese cat staring directly into the camera. This was his author photo for all of his publications, and he listed the cat as the co-author on all of them. There is a statue that has been built of him in this pose, which is awesome. And so if anybody, you start telling your friends about the story of Camazotz, the death bat, the bat with human arms that decapitates victims and dunks them through basketball hoops, and people will be like, well, where does that story come from? And you can say, well, we know it because a Soviet linguist and his cat wrote several books about it. And you will not be wrong. And I think that's it. I think that's what we've got this week. We have the Halloween badasses involving a large gourd, basketball, and Halloween and bats, and a
fluffy bunny,
and a fluffy kitty, and what was that thing called?
Quadamundi.
A quadamundi, yes.
Yeah.
Other fuzzy things. And the vampire bats, which are fuzzy but not cute. Although some people might think they're cute. I don't know. I think they look ugly.
Yeah, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
All right. Well,
happy Halloween.
Yes.
Trick or treat, everyone.
Yes, yes. If you're looking for last minute Halloween costumes, Camazotz the Death Bat, or your own interpretations of whatever you believe flying scab or demon jaundice might look like. So happy Halloween. And thanks so much. We'll see you on the next episode.
Stay badass.
Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content. Executive producers are me, Ben Thompson, Dr. Patricia Larish, and Andrew Jacobs. Writing is by me and Pat. Story editing by Ian Jacobs. Mixing and music and sound design by Jude Brewer. Special thanks to Noel Brown at iHeartRadio. Badass of the Week is based on my website, badassoftheweek.com, where you can read all sorts of stories about other badasses. If you want to reach out with questions or ideas, you can email us at badasspodcast@badassoftheweek.com. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, follow, listen, and tell your friends and tell your enemies. And please leave us a rating. We'll be back next week with another one.